Hello, ladies and gents. All right, so as you guys know, some of you may know, some of you may not. Over the last few weeks, we have decided to do a 0 to 2400 healer challenge. Trying to push all our healers to 2400 every single spec, which I ended up doing a Fistweaver afterwards because I finished all the healers. So basically, we took every single healer spec. There are 7 of them. 8 if you want to count Fistweaver as its own individual spec. We ended up getting all of them to 2400 within, I want to say, a couple weeks or so. So basically, I decided to, a bit late, I must say, but I decided to record something to give a little bit of insight on the experience of doing that, and also just kind of an overview and some advice, I guess, on what healers you could play, which ones are going to be the easiest. I'll end up ranking them, having a few tips for each of them for pushing rating. So without further ado, let's get started. We're going to start off with Holy Paladin. So for those who have been playing a bit of Arena so far this patch, we all kind of know that Holy Pally is probably the best healer. I think it is the best healer overall. I would say a close second is, Evoker's really good. Holy Priest has its moments too, but there seems to be a very clear best healer at the moment, and I would say it's Holy Pally. It's probably the easiest one to play in solo shuffle and push rating, I would say. It helps being a healer that's really good. It helps playing a healer that's obviously strong in the meta. And I think Holy Pally in general is, if everything was stacked up together, I would say Holy Pally is probably one of the easier healers to learn. You just have a lot of throughput, a lot of healing output. You have good cooldowns as well, so being able to press Bop or something. You press a Blessing of Protection when you get deep into dampening, and there you go. Automatically win a shuffle round. You're fighting a melee cleave, your teammates get low, you're at 60, 70% dampening, you have Blessing of Protection. Well, if they can't purge it, all of their pressure is gone, and there you go. You get a nice win in solo shuffle just off that alone. So I think Holy Pally, I can say without a doubt, was probably the easiest in terms of pushing rating, and it was definitely the most relaxed experience, I would say. Anyone who saw the Disc Priest videos knows that that's probably going to be on the opposite side of the spectrum. Disc Priest was easily the worst experience that I've had in Shuffle, but Holy Pally, very top in terms of not only fun, but in terms of the ease of pushing ratings. So basically, I'm gonna try to come up with a few tips, I would say. I think there's a few things that people could do correctly on Pally. There are some things that people just don't really do too well. Little global presses here and there that can kind of help a lot of people push rating. Now, I think the biggest thing about Paladin right now, for those who have not played it or thinking about getting into it, or they're playing it right now, they're picking it up and they're a bit confused. Paladin, basically, they got a few changes during the rework, and they're at a point now where a lot of your healing is going to come from 3 things. It's going to come from Holy Shock, it's going to come from Glimmer of Light, and it's going to come from Tears Deliverance. So majority of your healing is coming from these 3 mechanics, these 3 spells. You are going to have healing from Word of Glory as well, which is your holy power spender that you've had for, quite a while now. But a lot of your healing output is going to come from these, spamming Holy Shock. You have a talent here with Glorious Dawn that has a chance to reset your Holy Shock CD as well, so you get a charge back whenever you press it. You have a high chance with Glimmers out to get an extra proc, so you can basically spam out Holy Shock even more. You have Tears Deliverance, which is basically just an AoE heal that's on yourself. It's kind of like a healing tide totem for those of you shaman players. It only heals one person though every few seconds, or every 0.9 seconds instead of the entire team, but it does proc a lot, and it also puts up a healing buff, which is a 25% healing buff. It shows that it's 15 because in PvE it did get nerfed, but it is a 25% healing buff on your target for your Holy Shock, your Flash, and your Holy Light. So really, really important buff to keep up. You can keep it up for a minute at a time. You have a talent called Boundless Salvation, so pressing your healing spells will extend your Tears Deliverance up to a maximum of 40 seconds, which gives you a total of 1 minute of this big, hot heal that not only gives you a good amount of HPS, but it also buffs your healing as well. So really, really, really important to keep this buff up. You also have a spell called Daybreak, which is a new talent. Basically activates your glimmers and retracts them from your targets, and also gives you mana for each glimmer that you activate. You also get your next 3 Holy Shocks cast 2 extra times. So you have a talent that works with Daybreak right here, which is your capstone. So After you Daybreak, you're going to have a massive amount of burst healing, which you could also use for damage in the form of Holy Shock spam. So that's pretty much how Paladin is right now. It's the same thing as before. You rotate your cooldowns with Blessing of Sacrifice. You have Blessing of Freedom to help your teammates keep up with targets that are obviously just very mobile. You have Divine Toll still. You still have Wings. You have Lay on Hands now in PvP, which is pretty nice as well because you do get a little bit of mana back from that with Tyrion's Devotion. So Paladin overall is pretty similar, except I would say the toolkit feels a lot more full compared to previously in Dragonflight. You also have the blessing spells as well. If anyone remembers blessings from Shadowlands, you had that obviously in Dragonflight. We still had this talent, but because no one really saw Pally, people forgot how good it actually was. So that's what we'll do. We'll do this pretty quick. I tend to talk a lot and go on a bit, a few tangents here and there, but we'll try to make this quick and easy to learn for those of you who want to play Pally or want to push rating and solo shuffle. So every healer has an opener. Every class has an opener. It's not just DPS. So a lot of people think, DPS are going to have their opener, their opening rotation. But at the end of the day, every class, every spec is going to have some sort of opener, some sort of opening rotation. So for Paladin, I would say the opener is pretty straightforward, pretty easy to understand when it comes to shuffle. You can watch a lot of people play Pally. You can watch, some of my VODs of me playing Pally. You can watch the tournaments of players playing Holy Paladin. The game is kind of similar in terms of what you do in the initial, 5 to 10 seconds. So, but basically the objective is you're going to run in, you're going to maybe Holy Shock one person, the main target, whoever you think is going to be the main target. You can Holy Shock them, get Glimmer of Light on them as well. Have it early because Glimmer of Light is a damage reduction also on top of having a lot of healing. So you're going to be able to Holy Shock the main target, whoever you think it is. And as long as people are starting to seem like they're pushing in, you press your Tears Deliverance, and then you can press Hand of Divinity. And what you can do is you can either save your Hand of Divinity, your 2 healing Holy Lights, because Hand of Divinity is a talent that gives you 2 instant Holy Lights. They heal for more and they cost less mana. But the reason that it's nice to have Hand of Divinity, in my opinion, is because of the Boundless Salvation talent we talked about earlier. So Holy Light will extend your Tears Deliverance for twice as much as a Flash of Light and 4 times as much as a Holy Light or Holy Shock. So Holy Shock is 2 seconds, Flash of Light is 4, Holy Light is 8. So being able to get up a Tears Deliverance and a Hand of Divinity back to back before the action really starts, so to speak, is very important and very crucial for just having more HPS on Paladin, because you're going to be able to have an immediate extension of your Tears Deliverance. So if you don't get to extend Tears Deliverance for whatever reason, you get CC'd, you lag out, something crazy happens, your cat jumps on your keyboard, you're only going to have 20 seconds of that buff. But if you can start off by getting a Hand of Divinity early, you'll be able to have 36 seconds of Tears Deliverance. And that's not including, just the Holy Shocks you're going to get out as well. So once again, every healer is going to have an opener. A huge part of Paladin, I would say, is just being able to keep up Tears Deliverance as much as you can. So what you can do in this opener is you can either hold your 2 Holy Lights and save them, or what you can do is you can just kind of press them on yourself or just to keep up the buff, because you're not really spending too much mana, so you are going to be able to keep up the buff with basically no downside. Even if you want to just use the stacks immediately instead of saving them for healing. So huge tip right there that I think a lot of people do not do correctly when they play Holy Pally and Shuffle. And I think even this simple mechanic alone is going to help a lot of people climb. So there's 3 main issues I think that a lot of players have when it comes to playing Holy Pally right now. For those who remember the mana changes, Paladin got nerfed very hard on their passive mana. So their passive mana regen in PvP is 2,000, which I believe is still the lowest in the game. So you get 2,000 mana every 5 seconds on a Holy Pally. I think majority of healers have 4,000 or 5,000 mana regen every 5 seconds. So Paladin was completely nerfed on their mana regen, their passive mana regen. But do not worry, their mana is still very good. However, it does require you to press your spells efficiently. And what I mean by that, when people talk about efficiency, Sometimes they say it and it's really not that difficult. They just, you know, they want to make it sound way harder than it is. Saving mana on Pally is not the hardest thing. You're going to be able to have multiple talents that give you mana. You have multiple spells that give you mana. You have Lay on Hands with this talent here with Tyrion's Devotion. So whenever you press Lay on Hands, which you should be pressing early on, I would say, in solo shuffle, just because it is a heal that is affected by dampening and Mortal Strike effects. So if you're trying to save Lay on Hands for the last second of the game, you know, 90% dampening, it's not going to do much. So you obviously don't want to waste it. You don't want to press Lay on Hands when, you know, you're fighting a warrior or a rogue or something that's going to stun your teammate and you're going to try to Lay on Hands early, and then you can't press Blessing of Protection for 30 seconds because they're on Forbearance, right? So you don't want to waste the talent, but it is good to try and use early on in a shuffle round because it gives you mana back and because it does provide a good heal that you don't want to wait till the last second for when you're in max dampening. So Lay on Hands gives you a tiny bit of mana. You also get mana from Reclamation, which is just a passive talent where every time you Holy Shock, you get a little bit of their mana cost back depending on their health. It also makes your Holy Shock heal more. So, you know, if you're Holy Shocking people with low health, you're going to get more mana back. If you're Holy Shocking people with your Divine Toll as well, your Daybreak, you're getting mana from those spells. So a huge thing about Paladin is pressing those spells. So we have Lay on Hands that gives mana. We have your Reclamation passive, which gives mana. We have Divine Revelations, which is a talent that empowers your Infusion of Light procs. So this talent can also give you mana. So for those who remember Paladin, every time you crit a Holy Shock, you get 2 stacks of Infusion of Light with your Inflorescence talent. So what this does, your Flash of Light gets buffed, your Holy Light gets buffed, your Judgment gets buffed. So your next spell up to 2 for that buff, however long you have it, is going to be buffed. You can use this a few different ways. One huge way that people save mana on Pally is because of the Inflorescence talent here, you are going to have a free Flash of Light with Infusion procs. So what that means is if you get a crit with Holy Shock and you have Infusion of Light up, your next Flash of Light is not going to cost any mana. This is one way that Paladins are being more efficient now with their mana. You have Holy Light as well, which I talked about, which you can pair with Hand of Divinity. If you ever are in the middle of a shuffle round, you have an Infusion of Light proc. You can also use that with your Hand of Divinity. So you can get a proc. You have Hand of Divinity up, and you can use that Holy Light that's now buffed, and it'll only cost 3,000 mana. And what's nice about this as well is you are going to get mana back from this. So you are going to get a little bit of mana back. I believe it's 1,400 mana, I believe, is how much you get back. So that means if you have an Infusion of Light proc and you have a Hand of Divinity up, your Holy Light's going to cost 3,000 mana and you're going to get 1,400 mana back. So you're basically having 1,400 mana. You save a lot because you're spending, you know, 1,600 mana there instead of the usual 6,000 or the usual 3,000, I should say, because of Hand of Divinity. So that is one other way people are saving mana. You also have Judgment, which gets empowered because you have a talent called Greater Judgment now. So your Greater Judgment is going to provide a damage absorb as a debuff on the target that you're pressing Judgment on, which means if you Judgment a warrior and you have an Infusion proc with your Judgment, that's going to provide I believe it's a 60 to 70,000 damage absorb on that target, which means the next 60 to 70,000 damage the warrior does is going to be absorbed. So it's just another form of HPS. But the nice part about this is it works with your procs as well. So whenever you Judgment with Infusion, you're going to get another 1,400 mana back, just like your Holy Light. So you are going to save a bit of mana there as well, because Judgmenting now in this patch with Holy Paladin is very good to do. You get a damage absorb from it. You also get Holy Power on top of doing a decent amount of damage. So Judgment is a very important spell to have now. You don't want to spam it too much if you're worried about mana, because there is a mana cost to it, but it is another important spell now whenever you're trying to have more HPS or trying to have more Holy Power generation. So that's another way people have mana on Paladin. Another huge source of mana is your Daybreak, which gives you 3,000 mana for each Glimmer of Light you activate and absorb. So you have a talent right here called Illumination, right? So Glimmer is normally 3, but if you have Illumination up, you can Glimmer up to 8 targets total. So What that means is that if you somehow manage to have 8 holy shocks out, I don't know if you're holy shocking pets, if you're divine tolling pets, whatever it is, if you have 8 holy shocks out total, which isn't that realistic, but it is going to happen against some pet classes, whether it's a Demo Lock or an Unholy DK or a BM Hunter. If you can get 8 Glimmer of Lights, what that means is you're going to have 3,000 mana each, so you're going to have 24,000 mana after you press Daybreak, because you're going to retract all of those glimmers. You heal with that, and then you also get mana back. So that's one way you get mana on Paladin. What I like to do most of the time on Pally is I will try to pair Divine Toll and Daybreak together because they're the same cooldown. Divine Toll obviously has a mana cost, but because you have Divine Resonance, you're going to continue to have Holy Shocks for a few seconds afterwards. You also are going to have a good amount of burst healing with this as well, because it's going to activate your glimmers and it's going to help proc your Beacon of Light healing. So what I like to do normally is I like to Divine Toll and pair it with Daybreak so that I make sure I get glimmers, so that I make sure that I get mana back from it as well. And I think that is a good way to have burst healing as well as regaining some mana. So you can Daybreak after you press Divine Toll. You also, if you want to, you can spec into Divine Plea. Personally, I'm not really the biggest fan of Divine Plea. I think it is good in some situations. But if you want to be safer with your mana regen, Divine Plea basically makes it so Daybreak, no matter how many glimmers you consume, restores 24,000 mana over the course of 15 seconds. You get a healing debuff with it, as well as a damage debuff, unfortunately. So you do have decreased healing and damage. But you will have the constant 24,000 mana returned. So it's going to be a constant number. It doesn't matter how many glimmers or anything you have out. So you can basically Daybreak without any glimmers at all, and you'll be able to have the buff for 24,000 mana. You will have to be careful, however, because you can purge Divine Plea. So Divine Plea can be dispelled by, mages, shamans, etc. So have to be careful with that, but this is a talent option as well. And then last but not least, because it's very, very good, we have our blessing spells. For those who remember Shadowlands, for those who have played a little bit of Pally so far, you get the Blessings of the Seasons talent and spell, which obviously you can rotate through the blessings. Blessing of Summer is going to provide a damage buff. It provides a buff that gives you a damage proc for a percentage of the damage that you're doing. So, you can press your damage on a Warlock. Let's say you get really lucky on a Destro Lock and you're pressing Chaos Bolt back to back. You have a chance for all of those spells to do an additional 25% damage. After that, you have Blessing of Autumn. Blessing of Autumn, for those of you who remember Ineffable Truth back in Battle for Azeroth, which was the cooldown recovery corruption, you basically have that now as a Paladin. You had that back in Shadowlands, and you have that now. So whenever Blessing of Autumn is up on an ally or yourself, your spells are going to recover 30% faster. So this talent is nice because as long as you're able to Blessing of Autumn yourself, which is normally what I think is the best thing to do, if you already have Tears Deliverance and Hand of Divinity or your Daybreak on cooldown, your Blessing of Autumn is going to help restore those CDs. So that's another way to help have a lot more uptime on these spells. I think the Paladins that can manage this are going to seem like they have unending HPS. So for a lot of Paladins out there, you always want a Blessing of Autumn yourself, in my opinion, just because you can regen all your CDs back. Paladin is known as the cooldown class, the cooldown healer. So obviously being able to regenerate those faster is going to be huge. Now, like we talked about with your mana regen, last but not least for that is your Blessing of Winter. Now, Blessing of Winter is extremely powerful. It is a 30-second buff. It regenerates 1% mana every 2 seconds. And you're going to be able to get 15% mana total. So what is nice about Paladin and what you should be doing, especially after the passive nerfs, like the passive mana nerfs, is when you're playing Shuffle, you want to make sure you're pressing your blessings as fast as you can. What you can also do is you can also just try to waste Blessing of Summer. I think Blessing of Summer is still very good for some classes, but if you're playing with classes that have more damage in the form of dots, in the form of damage over time effects, what you can do is you can kind of just press your Blessing of Summer in the starting room so that you can try to get to Autumn and Winter the fastest, because Autumn and Winter are the best 2 seasons to have for your blessings. So That is one thing that I think Paladins can do as well. And you have to remember that your blessings do not automatically reset to the first season, which is the summer season, per round. So if you go play normal arena, you queue up a twos game, your blessing is going to reset to summer every time. But when you queue solo shuffle, they do not reset you. So you have to be cautious of that, be wary of that. But finally, you know, to end it all with Paladin, Blessing of Winter gives you a ton of mana. So the way you regen mana on Paladin is you want to press these spells as much as you can. You want to be able to press Daybreak as much as you can to get mana back. You want to press your Blessing of Winter, your blessing spells as much as you can so you can get back to Winter, and press Winter on cooldown because you get mana back from that. You get mana back obviously from Reclamation. You get mana back from using your infusion procs wisely. So what that means is you can pair up your Hand of Divinity with Holy Light. You can use Judgment procs with your infusion of Light procs. So you can use Judgment to regain mana. You can also cast Flash of Light if you're ever in a situation where you can spam cast on Holy Pally and you have Infusion of Light procs. That will obviously save you a ton of mana because you're, one, getting a lot of healing throughput because Infusion, Flash of Lights with Infusion of Light procs, there's so many things to say on Paladin, are going to give you more healing. You get a healing buff on your next Flash, so you get mana back. You basically are saving mana because you're having this efficient casted spell that costs nothing. So huge thing that people can do on Paladin to save mana is obviously make sure that you're using your infusion procs wisely, whether it's a Judgment if you're not too worried about mana, just so you can get some back and you obviously provide a damage absorb, whether it's your Holy Light or whether it's pressing your Flash of Light with your infusion proc because it's going to cost nothing compared to the usual 8,000, I believe, 9,000. So every time you press Flash of Light and you cast Flash of Light with your Infusion of Light proc, you're saving 9,000 mana. So you're getting a solid, 80, 90, 100,000 heal for 0 mana cost on top of, healing your beacon target. So you get a 80, 90, 100,000 heal on your main target while also healing your beacon target for more, right? So that is what I would say is the biggest thing about Paladin. Mana wise is you want to make sure you're pressing your Daybreak as much as you can, especially if you're playing Divine Plea. You're pressing your blessings as fast as you can so you can get back to Winter, because Winter is going to give you 15% of your mana pull back in total. You want to make sure that you're using your Infusion of Light procs wisely. And I think in doing all of these things and hitting them on cooldown as fast as you possibly can, you're going to notice that your mana on Paladin isn't that bad. So a lot of people after the nerfs, everyone is in a rage, is in a riot about the mana being bad. But at the end of the day, if you're pressing your spells efficiently and you're pressing them as fast as you can to regain mana, you're still going to be able to heal solo shuffle rounds for 4 or 5 minutes to max dampening, if that's the length of the game, because we all know solo shuffle doesn't really last that long sometimes, but you do end up having those matches that are the dampener matches, 80%, 90% dampening. And if you want to succeed and if you want to climb, you need to be able to win in those solo shuffle rounds. And I think practicing your mana efficiency on Pally with your Daybreak and with your Blessing of Winter and your Infusion procs is going to be a huge boost to your rating, because you're just going to win more. You're going to win more by outlasting the other healer. That's kind of what it comes down to a lot of the time. And I would say for Paladin, that's going to be the overview. I think those are the biggest things that you could do. You're going to keep up your Tears Deliverance. You're going to keep up your Holy Shock spam with your Glimmers. You're going to make sure that you get the opener right that we talked about with Tears Deliverance and Hand of Divinity. And you're going to make sure that you press Daybreak and Blessing of Winter as much as you can to regain mana, while also using your Infusion of Light procs efficiently. And if you can do that, I guarantee the rating is just going to go up, because you're going to outlast other healers. You're going to have more HPS, which is going to make your teammates feel safe. Your DPS are going to feel more safe, and they're going to be able to just be more aggressive and not panic, which is all you can ask for from a healer, is kind of making sure that the team stays stable. So I would say overall, the biggest thing on Paladin are those 3 things. I think that if you can do those efficiently, it's going to be a lot easier to figure out CC. It's going to be a lot easier to figure out your cooldown rotation and your blinding light. But I think those 3 tips alone are the most important thing you can try to figure out and shuffle if you want to climb rating. So For those who play Paladin, good luck. And that's going to be Pally.